Good afternoon. I'm Saad Al-Aziz, the owner and head instructor of Semper Fortis Jiu Jitsu here in San Antonio, Texas, and here to tackle this week's question of the week. So this week, I got a question. It was on one of the comments on one of my YouTube videos. It's a student that apparently is at another school, and his question was what to do with his conflict of his instructor wants him to do a guard pass, a closed guard pass, one way, but he watched a video from a world champion black belt who shows doing that same technique a different way. And the instructor that he trains with every day apparently has never won a world championship, and he has a different way of doing that pass and wants his student to do it the way he showed it. And so the person is like, what's your opinion on this? And what my opinion on it is, and it's a modern phenomena in jiu-jitsu, because in years past there was no videos, there was no instructional videos, and really instructional videos were really frowned upon by the majority of the Brazilian jiu-jitsu community. So nobody was really making them, where today, man, everybody's making them. Bernardo Faria, who's a multiple-time world champion, he runs BJJ Fanatics, has all kinds of videos on there, and they're great videos, great instructionals. I think there's some other places like Budo videos, and there's people that had been making CDs, with great instructional videos, so you could learn from some of the best in the world. But here's the deal. Your instructor, although he has not won a world championship, that does not mean that he's teaching a technique that's not as effective as the guy that made the video who's won multiple world championships at black belt. For instance, two of, in my opinion, the best jiu-jitsu instructors as far as on the competition circuit today are John Danaher with his Danaher Death Squad, who's made multiple jiu-jitsu champions, and his student Gordon Ryan and Gary Tonin, they absolutely dominate, especially the no-gi tournament circuit. And Cicero Costa out of Sao Paulo, Brazil. Some of his students, many of his students have gone on to be world champions, like Leandro Lowe, Murillo Santana, Manuel Hibmar, Natalie De Jesus, the Miao brothers. They're all Cicero Costa students. And he's created multiple world champions. Both John Danaher, I've never seen compete. I know he's never won the world championships, but he's arguably the best coach in the United States teaching jiu-jitsu right now. But he's never won a world championship himself. Cicero Costa, I've seen him compete before over the years. I'm pretty sure he's never won a world championship himself. I've seen him reach the podium before in the Master Worlds or Pan Ams, but and I could be wrong, but I don't think he's ever won the world championships. But if you're lucky enough to train with John Danaher or Cicero Costa, and they show you a technique, I don't care what anybody's showing. I would take advantage of training with those two non-world champions. And so don't get the impression that just because a person has won the world championships, that their technique is superior to an instructor who does not compete or has not won the world championships. It may be, but it may not be, because teaching a technique and competing are not the same thing, So some techniques that are going to work for, certain world champions are only going to work for them, and they're not necessarily a superior technique. Heck, the student could have been my student, because I've never won a world championships. The best I've ever done is I've gotten bronze a couple times at the Master Worlds and bronze a few times at the Pan American Championships, but I've never won a world championships. And I'm a fairly decent instructor. But, watching a video is one thing, but learning from your instructor day to day, is a whole different ball game, and you're going to get better details, better instruction. Not to say don't watch the videos, but just realize that your instructor is giving you advice because he's looking out for your own best interest, and he's trying to help you. And so, because what the person had said in their comment was that it was the only closed guard pass that was working for them was the one that they watched on the video. And here's the deal with techniques in jiu-jitsu. Well, one, just know that you are going to have to learn several closed guard passes because there's not one, at least that I have found, that works on every opponent. Sometimes, you may do the Sao Paulo pass and that works for you. Maybe you have to do the over-under pass or the double under pass or the ABC pass, or there's all kinds of names for different passes. But you're going to have to know more than one. And learning from the video, sometimes you're not going to be able to get all the intricate details that you're going to get from your instructor and all the intricate details. And the techniques don't have to be advanced, world champion, super fancy techniques to work and be effective. And what I mean by that is if you doing the technique that your instructor showed you is not working, it's not working not because the technique is not good. It's not working because your proficiency level at that technique is not good enough for it to work against whoever you're sparring with or competing with. For instance, I've competed against Megaton Dias 3 times in tournaments. And 3 times, Megaton Dias has whooped my butt. He's a phenomenal competitor, a phenomenal teacher. He's just amazing. But all 3 times that he beat me with techniques that I have seen and done over the years that a lot of people would say are very basic, fundamental techniques. But let's say it was a scissor sweep that he beat me with. Some people are like, oh man, like most people when they do the scissor sweep, it doesn't work against me. But that's because their proficiency at the scissor sweep isn't that good. Megaton's proficiency at the scissor sweep was good enough to sweep me. Same thing with the guard passes. It's what's your proficiency at the guard pass is more important than is it the new, most exciting, tournament-tested guard pass or whatever the technique is. So I would rely on your instructor because you're going to need to know more than one guard pass. And pick your instructor's brain and go to class, learn the techniques that he's teaching. Do the techniques exactly the way he shows them. And then, afterwards, after the class, when you're, sparring or doing an open mat, if you prefer a modification of those techniques, that's a different ball game. But I would talk to the instructor and, try to get clarification on, what techniques to use. And here's the thing, years ago, Eddie Bravo, he had a really funny quote, and I won't quote him exactly, but he's like, in jiu-jitsu, you should question everything. Except if you're a white belt, you should do it exactly the way I showed you. And he used some other colorful language, but just do the technique the way I showed you. So there's things that you're just not going to understand as a white belt. And you think like, oh, well, this doesn't make sense to me. A lot of things in jiu-jitsu aren't going to make sense to you at white belt. But they're tried and true techniques. And, this is assuming that your instructor is is a legitimate instructor. He's not Rex Kwon Do or, some of those TV characters or what's that new Detroit urban survival guy, assuming that you're at a legitimate, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu school, your instructor is teaching you tried and true techniques. And if you learn those techniques and do it exactly the way they tell you, and repeat it and drill it and drill it and drill it. And when I say drill it, the old saying, I remember Helson Gracie years ago, I was in a class with him and he's like, hey, keep doing the technique until you do the technique 10,000 times and then you're an expert at the technique. Until you repeat that technique 10,000 times, you need to keep practicing. So if you drill a technique and you've only done it 5 or 10 times, drilling it, against most people, that technique's not going to work for you, especially against most people that are training. It absolutely has very little chance. If you're a white belt and you've drilled this technique 5 times, is it going to work against purple belts, brown belts, black belts? It's probably not going to work. And it's not because the technique doesn't work. It's just you're not proficient enough at the technique for it to work. Maybe you're getting the technique 80% correct. 80% correct will probably work against, other white belts, or maybe even against some blue belts. But you're going to have to be a lot more proficient at that technique for it to work against advanced belts. So that's the deal with the question of the week. I would lean towards doing it the way your everyday instructor shows you to do it. Watch videos. Videos can enhance your training. But man, when you're a white belt, you really don't need to spend a lot of time watching videos. You should spend more of your time in class drilling the techniques that your instructor has shown you, and less time looking for a new cool video that, because it doesn't matter who you're watching on video, you can't ask and get clarification from that instructor on the video. So videos can enhance your training, but at white belt, a lot of times videos are just going to confuse you. And nothing beats seeing your instructor every day, or coming in to train with your instructor and having them adjust your technique so you're able to perfect the technique. And the more you drill it, the better you're going to be at it. So that's this week's question of the week. I appreciate the question, and we'll keep working. And if you got a question for next week, feel free to drop a line, and I will do my best to answer that question for you. All right, ciao.